right, hey everybody, this is Mike from Both Lighting USA. I have a quick little video in regards to our tubes. We had a few requests for people trying to figure out how to set up our tubes with the Wolfmix system. I'm starting with a brand new project. I am on firmware 2, the beta version. This should be very, very similar to those of you on the original firmware. We're in the middle of revamping our pre-programmed packages to include support for firmware 2, so be on the lookout for that. What I've decided to do is work off a visualizer today with 8 tubes. I'm going to set them up into 80 channel mode. You can use any channel mode you like. We recommend that you use the highest channel count you have available, but it's entirely up to you. We're going to set up 8 tubes split across 2 sets of fixture banks. So basically I'm going to tell the Wolfmix unit to set up 4 individual fixtures, and then we will double them. So I go into fixtures, I hit add, I look for my fixture profile. In this case, I have a new fixture profile for V2. So if yours looks a little different, don't be alarmed. I'm going to set 4 units with my encoder here, and I'm going to click on it. I don't have any groups set because there are no other fixtures, so I'll just go with group A for now. Your unit may ask you if you want to split beams. This is an advanced feature we'll talk about in another video. For right now, you can go ahead and just hit no and double check all of your addresses. My Wolfmix unit has decided to go with channels 181, 161, and 241 because there's no other channels in the way. At this point, you'll want to take your lights out, make sure they're charged up, turn them on, get them set to whatever channel mode you want. In my case, it's 80 channel mode. Then you're going to want to double check all of your wireless settings so that you're on the right wireless channel. You can see some other videos we have on our website on how to do that. And then I would really highly recommend that you go ahead and label your lights so that you know which one is set to what channel. Once you get on a job, you don't have to fiddle around too much. Once you have all your fixtures addressed and ready to go, you can hit the go button or you can hit home, either way. And now you're going to see a group lane over here. You may see some light on your lights. It depends on what version you're running. But I have a dimmer in the form of a knob on the top that will come up and down. And then I can go ahead and set colors to test with. If I wanted to test an amber, I could go ahead and click on that button once I've hit the color mode on the left-hand side. And if I go back home, I can dim them up and down at will and everything will work out just fine. Feel free to play around with your colors. If you'd like to modify any existing pre-saved colors in here, you certainly can. Let's say, for example, this lime color is not to my liking. I can go ahead and hit Shift and the button of the color that I want to change, and I can dial in however I'd like. I can maybe introduce a little bit of blue. I can take a little bit of red and pop it in there. I could even use my finger across the screen here and make these custom creations however I want. There are a few other ways that you can play with things. You'll notice on the encoders, we have red, green, blue, and white. And then we could also run in CMY, in hue mode, and in a grid mode. There's lots of different ways to kind of play around with color. Use whatever is more comfortable for you. Once you get saved, you can just go ahead and hit Shift and the color, and everything will save and it will remain there. This is just kind of scratching the surface in terms of all the things that we can do with the Wolfmix. But color is the first place I like to start. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch over to a white, just to keep things kind of neutral. Once you get your tubes set up and you have them all laid out in the room, you can start to experiment with some of the various effects engines that happen in the Wolfmix. And you can really start to see how much control you have over these lights, especially when you have them spanned over multiple channels. I'm going to start with something called a beam effect, which is on the left-hand side here, beam effects. This is going to open me into a purple version of the screen that you've been seeing. Purple seems to kind of correspond with beam effects all the time. Green will correspond with move effects, and blue will correspond with color effects. This is important later. Back in my beam effects, I can set a few different various effects based on the dimmer of your lights and then associate them to each group. Groups are always up and down like this. I only have one group, so I only have one row of purple lights. I'm going to go ahead and turn my group on by hitting the topmost button, and you're going to start to see lights moving, okay? Now again, we're not dealing with any color, we're just dealing with intensities. So you're going to start to see a white base with some absence of color or just black, okay? The effects engine is something I would highly recommend you play with as much as you can so you can kind of get a feel for how powerful the WMX unit is, because you can really do a lot with just a few parameters. Right now I have a couple of settings. I have speed, phase, size, and fade. Speed is pretty self-explanatory. If I turn it up, I'm going to get more motion. If I turn it down, I'm going to get slower motion. I'm going to go over to the right and talk about the fade side. If I keep it at 100%, you're going to see intensity fade in and fade out. If I pop it down to 0, you're going to see more of a blinking effect. Okay? The thing that gets interesting is the phasing. If you leave your phase at 0, all of your lights are going to do the same thing. If you start to introduce your phase, you're going to see the same effect happening, but it's going to be spanned across time, across all of the fixtures that you have. So with just a few milliseconds of playing around, you can dial in some really cool things that you can save into a preset if you'd like to. There's also different modes. I'm just kind of fiddling around here. Use at your own discretion. Some things look better than others. And those are some of your beam effects, okay? Let's move on a little bit and let's talk about color effects, which is really where the tubes kind of shine. The color effects, unlike before where we had a standard color, the color effects will override the original color and will allow you to kind of dial in things as you want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a very, very simple red, green, and blue. Once I enable that, all of my tubes are going to cycle between 3 different colors, red, green, and blue. I can turn my fade up just like I did in my dimmer and get a smoother motion. And then I can also turn my phase up and get a little bit more of a kaleidoscope of colors that happens across all of the individual segments of the tubes. You can also play around with, in firmware 2, the various functions of linking. So we could link things by group, where you'll see the color is associated across the entire group. In this case, 4 different lights. Remember, the top 4 are going to be just mirrors of the bottom 4. We could also link them per fixture, where every fixture will get divided up into equal pieces, but will all look the same across all the fixtures. So this is a linked group. You can see the motion across all 4 sets of lights. And then this is linked fixture, where you're going to see more of a matched pair. A lot of people like to run the link fixture mode when it comes to the tubes because it keeps them uniform. You can, of course, change the colors if you want. You can create any kind of pastels or any kind of shades that you want. And just like with the regular color menu, in the color effects, you are free to play and adjust with any of these colors. So if, for example, this red is not a red that I like, if I want to introduce some white to kind of lighten it up, I can, and then save it. And this will add itself to the range of colors. It's also important to know that the color switching happens just like reading a book, left to right, top to bottom. So if I had red, green, orange, blue, and white, you're going to see them move in that particular order because it's moving this way. You can also play around with different kinds of modes for colors. There's lots of different things that you can play around with. There's more than just colors. There's different modes. We have pulses, we have twinkles, and lots of different parameters associated with all of that. And then, of course, your overrides are also going to work on your tubes so that you can play with them at any point while you're maybe DJing or running a band or something like that, and keep your show a little bit more interesting looking. That basically covers the very beginnings of getting tubes running on a Wolfmix. If you have any more questions, you're more than welcome to schedule a consultation with us. You're also more than welcome to reach out in regards to our pre-programmed packages. Still doing custom packages for people with one-on-one consultations. So feel free to drop us an email at any point at info@bothlightingusa.com. That's it for now. See you soon.